Yuji was a poor kid, constantly bullied by his dad for not having any talent. He lived in the shadow of his brilliant sister, Kazuki, whose talents made their family wealthy. But when tragedy struck their home, Yuji was orphaned and trained by evil people to become the coldest elite soldier in the world. His journey was one of the harshest ever witnessed. His parents always ignored him because he didn't have the same talent as his sister Kazuki. From a young age, her drawings amazed their father, and her skills surpassed those of famous artists. Winning numerous art competitions and earning millions of dollars, Yuji grew up avoiding his sister because everyone teased him when he was with her. Kazuki tried to fill the void Yuji felt, becoming the only person who would play with him and even teach him how to throw a ball. They spent time together, with Kazuki supporting him through everything, encouraging him to chase his dreams because she believed he had extraordinary potential. She was the only one who brought him joy and inspired him to be like her. She even treasured his bad drawings to boost his confidence. However, their father continued mocking Yuji's work to the point where he destroyed his own creations out of embarrassment. One random day, Yuji met a strange man in his home who offered him a piece of chocolate from an interesting box. His father called Yuji an embarrassment, but the mysterious man just smiled slyly. As years passed, Kazuki began hiding her talent and even canceled her art studies in Paris. Instead, she spent time reading manga with her brother, suggesting he do the same to make friends rather than being lonely. She didn't want Yuji to turn into someone like their father, urging him to start making friends. Meanwhile, her occasional paintings became the family's sole income, but their treatment of Yuji worsened. The family would go out to eat every night, leaving only cold, stale bread for him. The only way he could eat the dry bread was by soaking it in water. Seeing this, Kazuki screamed at him to eat anything from the fridge, but Yuji told her their parents would be mad if he did. Kazuki's sadness grew, apologizing for not knowing how badly Yuji was treated and yelling at their parents for his mistreatment. Despite this, nothing improved. His father continued to openly show his hatred, and his mom began neglecting him to avoid his father's wrath. One day, Yuji strolled in late and told his sister he'd been hanging out with a friend. Kazuki immediately asked if it was a girl, to which he sheepishly admitted it was. She worriedly asked if Kazuki would bully his new friend. Kazuki, trying to be the overprotective sibling, said she was just checking if his friends were suitable for him, and got irritated that he was always befriending girls. Kazuki's jealousy flared up and she declared that he needed her permission to be friends with girls. Yuji, ever the peacemaker, agreed, and Kazuki held his hand, promising that she'd find the perfect girl for him someday. Later that same day, Kazuki asked if he wanted to take a bath with her, insisting it was a totally normal sibling thing. Kazuki told him that siblings do this all the time and then asked if he'd ever kissed a girl like they do in manga. She kissed him that day, declaring it was the true love she felt for him, and proceeded to teach him all sorts of things. Eventually, she enrolled in a regular high school and joined the basketball team to conceal her incredible talents. Her friends became her minions as she manipulated them, and her control over their parents scared Yuji more than anything. Despite this, Yuji relied on his sister, wishing they could continue living that way forever until the tragedy struck. A bus had crashed into a ravine, with a red-haired girl as the sole survivor. Yuji's father spiraled into depression and hit the bottle hard. His rage grew, and his mother began hiding Yuji whenever his father came home. The only thing Yuji remembered was hearing his father yelling at his mom while she meekly apologized. He became the worst father imaginable, so Yuji and his mom fled to a new home, where she finally treated him like a normal son. He enjoyed her home cooking and felt like he was living in paradise, even if they were broke. As long as they were away from his father, they found happiness together. But their peace was short-lived. A year later, Yuji's father tracked them down. He told Yuji's mom she'd lay another golden egg, and Yuji tried to stand up to him. He couldn't bear seeing his mother suffer. But his dad knocked him into the fridge. As Yuji lay there, he made up his mind to end his father. He remembered his sister once asking which hand he'd use to kill a man. He comforted his mom, who asked how far they should run this time. She told him to run first, saying she'd join him later, and handed him her life savings. She instructed him to head to the train station and wished him luck. Without hesitation, Yuji obeyed and ran to the train station. Hours passed, and he heard ambulance sirens rushing back home. He found his father had been slashed and discovered he would never be able to speak to his mother again. He lost consciousness and later woke up in a hospital, with only a note from his mother. She asked for his forgiveness, wondered where she went wrong, and wished he could keep living. With nowhere to go, the mysterious man, Ray, became his guardian and started dressing him up as his little sister. Yuji tried to brush off his annoying guardian, grateful just to have walls around him and a bed to sleep in. Nights went by peacefully, until one night when Ray's bodyguard decided it was time to harass Yuji. Big mistake. Yuji took him out without breaking a sweat. Ray walked in, shocked that Yuji had actually done it, and gave him a pat on the back for defending himself like a pro. And off went Yuji to a military compound to toughen up. He became the coldest soldier around, quickly becoming Ray's star pupil. Of course, this made him a prime target for bullying by the other kids. The only one who showed him any kindness was a girl named Marlene, who had no memory of her past. She'd save her food for him and was the one person Yuji felt he could count on. Ray, known as Oslo on the island, took training to a whole new level, having Yuji practice with real knives. Remember, he'd say, "Everyone's your enemy, even your own family." He convinced Yuji that he was his only true ally. Then came the final exam. Kill the person in front of him. To Yuji's horror, it was Marlene. He steeled himself, charging at her with punches and kicks. His agility outmatching hers, but as memories of his mom being hurt by his dad flashed through his mind, his focus shattered. Marlene seized the moment, knocking him down and pinning him. As she punched him, Yuji felt it was karmic payback for taking out his father. He lost, becoming a disappointment to Oslo. In his jail cell, Marlene came to tend his wounds, crying and apologizing for hurting him, wishing she hadn't done it. Despite the jail bars, Marlene kept trying to feed him and be there for him until her graduation. She said goodbye, promising they'd meet again, but that was the last time he ever saw her. A nurse later broke the sad news to Yuji about Marlene's fate after her first job, leaving him to wonder if beating her instead of being kind would have saved her. After graduating, Yuji embarked on his first assassination mission, sneaking into a rich man's room disguised as a maid. While the guy was distracted, Yuji efficiently completed his mission. His assassinations continued to be a roaring success, until one fateful day, law enforcement crashed Oslo's party. They bulldozed through everyone in their way, nearly cornering Oslo after decimating his security. They discovered an underground passage and a hefty steel door guarding it. After blowing it up, they found a white-haired kid sitting there. Asako looked at the boy, realizing she had stumbled upon something intriguing. Oslo made a splashy escape through the water. Asako decided to take Yuji with her to Japan, but JB tagged along because someone had to supervise this dynamic duo. At the hospital, Asako barked at Yuji to get out of bed within 40 seconds. Giving him a good whack on the head and continuing her threats, JB, feeling all maternal, yelled at her to be gentler with the kid. But Yuji had never experienced kindness and wouldn't recognize it if it hit him in the face. So Asako treated him like a piece of garbage and told him to knock it off. She grabbed his face, declaring herself his new god. At her home, she ordered him to change his filthy clothes, but what they saw left them stunned. His body was covered in scars and gunshot wounds, and he looked like he hadn't seen a meal in weeks. Asako told JB to grab drinks and food, but at the dinner table, Yuji didn't eat. Instead, when a fly buzzed by, he crushed it with his hand. Staring at the fly, his mind froze, and he screamed in terror and threw up. Asako, ever the comforting figure, told him not to puke in her disgusting home. At night, Asako realized his mind was more shattered than she had thought, especially after seeing his 2 gun wounds, countless knife gouges, and broken bones while she bathed him. Asako thought it might have been easier for him to just kick the bucket, but she vowed to protect him as his self-proclaimed god. The next morning, Asako sat on top of Yuji, forcing him to eat, while Yuji begged JB to save him. Asako told him to stop sweet-talking the dumb blonde, because she was so lonely and clueless she'd listen to anything. JB told Yuji to toughen up, but he countered that she had no idea what Asako had in store for him. In the kitchen, JB took one look at the food and realized she was holding a disaster on a plate. She dashed to the bathroom faster than Sonic, then spent the rest of the afternoon cooking food for Yuji. Asako doubted he'd eat, but when JB shoved her wet blonde rice in his face, he decided to chow down. Asako then got Yuji his very own puppy, his new partner, and told him to take good care of it. Yuji named it John Doe, a code name for a corpse in the military. Asako watched him playing with his puppy, and JB thought it was the first time she had seen him act like a real kid. A few months passed, and Asako decided to quit her job at the intelligence agency. JB warned her that she'd face imprisonment or worse if she just up and quit, and wondered if Yuji was the reason behind her change of heart. Asako spills the beans, admitting she's terrified of kicking the bucket because she needs to take care of Yuji. Plus, she's losing vision in one eye, so her days of being a top-notch sniper are numbered. One night, she heads outside and spots Yuji gazing at the stars, tears streaming down his face. As Yuji grows, he remembers Asako's advice. Run faster if you want to be popular with the girls in elementary school. As he keeps growing, Asako updates her advice. Running isn't enough in middle school, it's the bad boys who can fight that get the girls, so she starts training him to toughen up, teaching him to be strong and fight for the right reasons, not just to show off. She even teaches him to use whatever he needs to win, so Yuji calls his dog to bite her during training. Finally, she explains that fighters are only popular in middle school and high school, it's the brainiacs that girls go for. Asako makes him read all kinds of books, from manga to non-fiction, promising to buy him whatever he needs. After a marathon reading session, Yuji finds Asako cleaning her gun while puffing on a cigarette. She asks if he's ever fired one of these before and takes him to the wilderness the next day. He fires his first shot from 300 meters and completely misses. Determined, he takes another shot and hits the target. Asako rewards him with a case marked 9029, her agent number. This sniper rifle is now Yuji's. She tells him he must follow his path without ever giving up. Yuji asks if he can call her his master, because to him, she wasn't a mother, a sister, or a father, she was his master. In the winter, Asako and Yuji gather ammunition and head out for a hunt. He aims at a deer, and Asako reminds him not to waste a single bullet because they cost the taxpayers money. But Yuji can't pull the trigger. Asako sees his hesitation and doesn't blame him. He's been through more than most kids. One random day, Yuji wakes up to his dog barking and finds a bear has broken into their home. He rushes to his bedroom to grab his gun but returns to see John being bitten by the bear. He takes aim to save his dog, but his mind blocks him, and he can't fire. As the bear leaves, Yuji builds up the courage to rescue his dog. His days of living in fear are over. He runs out, ready to aim, but slips on the snow and clogs his gun. The bear notices and is ready to chow down on him, but Yuji uses his knife to slash at the bear. The bear knocks it away with one hit, and Yuji's mind flashes with the words to end the bear with a simple stick. He blinds the bear in one eye, grabs his gun, and points it right at the bear's head. A rustling noise catches Yuji's attention, and he sees a couple of bear cubs waddling toward his dog, apparently thinking it's their next meal. Yuji can't fathom why his dog, why his family, has become their dinner. He wonders why it couldn't have been any other life, completely unrelated to his, and screams in agony as he fires his gun. Later, Yuji returns to Asako, holding only his dog's collar. She asks him what happened. Yuji confesses that he couldn't bring himself to kill the bear in the end, no matter how hard he tried. She pulls him into a comforting hug, telling him that it's okay. They spend the evening burying his dog's collar, and Yuji wishes he could be as strong as Asako so he could face life with a smile. Asako reminds him that his life isn't just a pointless excuse until he dies. She acknowledges that he can't kill anything unless she gives him a direct order, but emphasizes that his food and shelter are funded by taxpayers, so he owes it to them to protect them. In the old days, Asako tells him, he wouldn't have been able to die until he had taken down 10 enemies. Now he must save 10 lives. She tells him that it doesn't matter if he's too weak to pull the trigger for his own sake. He should never hesitate to pull it to save someone else's life. A few years pass, and Asako reveals to JB that Yuji has undergone significant character development. JB wonders what kind of story she's referring to, and Asako quips that she was the story. She explains that Yuji experienced the rising action when he removed her plot armor and reached the climax before his plot underwent the falling action. JB yells at her for doing something so inappropriate, but Asako retorts that it's why JB's story arc will never develop. After all, they are a man and woman who have been living together for 2 years. Yuji remembers being in the shower with Asako and her asking him when his birthday was. Yuji told her it was today, so she asked him what he wanted for his birthday. Yuji, half joking, tells her he wants a nicer guardian. She bites him playfully, and he blushes. She promises him the best present of all. When he asks what it is, she says she will be the present.
What do you mean by that?
That was how his first time went, and JB asks if they've only done it once. Asako proudly states that they've had character development every single day since. Yuji returns with ramen, and JB pretends they weren't talking about anything because she's afraid Yuji overheard them. Asako teases JB, saying that's why she's never experienced a climax. She suggests JB give Yuji a try, boasting that she has trained him well, and advises her to have a few drinks in the meantime. After a few bottles, Asako gives Yuji a special mission. Now that JB is completely wasted, she wants Yuji to give her a good time. He pulls JB to the bedroom and doesn't let her go, calling her by her first name. Yuji, instead of eating the meaty dinner he was preparing, ends up feasting on his meaty rifle. A few more years drift by, and Asako's health takes a nosedive. Yuji notices her hands shaking every time she reaches for a drink, and begs her to quit because she's all he has left. No matter how many times he asks if she's sick, she always lies and says she's fine, but he can tell something's off. She starts zoning out more often, and her declining health causes her to miss work. It gets so bad that when the phone rings, she can't even pick it up, so Yuji steps in. On the other end, an agent is barking orders at Asako to respond to a mission, invoking Article 9, threatening imprisonment if she refuses. With her health in the dumps, Yuji starts taking on her assignments. A few days later, JB asks Asako why she hasn't been on the job, and Asako admits she's been passing the baton to Yuji. JB blows a gasket, accusing Asako of making Yuji handle her work just like Oslo did. But Yuji insists it's his choice. He wants to repay Asako someday. JB worries that Yuji is getting sucked into Asako's chaotic lifestyle, but Yuji argues it's the only way he can find purpose. JB storms out, firing bullets into the ceiling as she leaves. Down by the river, Yuji tells JB that he wants to be just like Asako and wonders if JB knows what Asako would say to that. JB figures Asako wouldn't want another her running around but is glad Yuji looks up to her. She asks him one last time if this is the path he wants to take, and he confirms it's the only way he can repay his debt to them. Afterward, Asako informs Yuji he's heading to America to attend military school. A big guy asks him what he's doing in this hellhole, and Yuji casually mentions he offed his parents. The guy is startled until Yuji says he's just messing around. After getting certified, Yuji tells the guy he should buy his own shoes if he doesn't want athlete's foot. The soldier, intrigued, asks how Yuji knows this, and Yuji explains he's been a soldier since he was a kid. But the guy thinks he's joking. In the bedroom, the guy calls him an Asian boy, and Yuji clarifies he's Japanese and introduces himself as Yuji. The guy mocks him for looking girly, but Yuji fires back that the guy's loud music is making him a deaf moron. The guy takes it in stride and introduces himself as Danny Boner, bragging about his big, Danny calls Yuji Shorty, and Yuji just rolls with it. The next day, the commander slaps Yuji in the face, saying he should be grateful and honored by the slap.
What?
During training, Danny lags behind and begs Yuji to wait up, but Yuji tells him to lay off the smokes. Even when they swim, Danny's big muscles give out faster, and Yuji tries to motivate him. He asks what Danny would do if a girl with big plot were drowning, which inspires Danny to swim faster than a shark. At lunch, Danny teases Yuji about his new face, but Yuji complains about their commander being a pain. Danny jokes that she's a gorilla who'll never get married, but Yuji calls her attractive. Danny thinks Yuji is completely nuts, but then Annie pops up and let's just say she gets a taste of Danny's big punisher. During target practice, Yuji nails every single shot, which shocks the commander. Apparently, only Asako, the world's top sniper, ever pulled off such a stunt. A girl overhears their chat and notices Yuji being awarded first place in sniping. Later that night, she approaches him, asking to chat. She introduces herself as Millie, and Yuji wonders why he always attracts the pushy ones. By the pool, she socks him one, and he restrains her until she apologizes. Recognizing her as the second-place sniper, he asks what she wants. Millie clarifies she meant marksmanship and they head to the range together. She tells him her dad used to hit targets out of range, though she thought he was just drunk and fibbing. Yuji's first shot misses and she tells him to chill. He's only got 6 shots left. Yuji asks her what color the sky is today, takes aim and nails the target. He reassures her that her dad probably wasn't lying, and Millie realizes she's found someone she can trust. With his training complete, Yuji is sent overseas for his final exam. On the ship, Danny asks what he bought with his earnings, mentioning he got a car. Yuji says he only bought a lady's watch. Danny mocks him, saying Yuji's been giving Millie the small hour hand, while Danny could give her the long minute hand. Millie hears Danny's crude remarks and kicks him. As they bicker, a random weirdo nearby is playing a dating simulator with his little sister, flipping out as she sheds her plot armor. They wonder how he's shamelessly doing this and what language he's speaking. Yuji, being a man of culture, realizes the guy must be a fellow otaku from Japan. Day after day, Yuji follows orders and builds confidence until they're finally deployed into the real deal. In the forest, Yuji assesses his squad. A former car thief and thug from Arizona, a poor girl who used to sell herself in restrooms, an anime otaku obsessed with his sister, and a sniper who can't hit anything. They're the most useless group in the army, but Danny snaps him out of his thoughts and asks if he wants to shoot a bird for food. Yuji takes the shot, hits the bird, but then starts puking. He wonders how he'll handle killing a person if a bird makes him this sick. In their tents, they meet their acting field commander. The days of setting traps begin, but one night, Yuji senses enemies approaching. They get into position as the battle kicks off, and Yuji fires to take down the enemy, only to start throwing up again. His comrades keep battling on the front lines, holding out for reinforcements, but Yuji starts losing his nerve. His commander advises him to close his eyes and remember that all his friends, his only family, might perish, the ones he's laughed with, shared meals with, all of them are his family, fighting to shield him from the enemy. The commander assures him that the enemy is inhuman, and while it's natural to hesitate in taking lives, he can't just watch his family die helplessly. He gives Yuji permission to kill, saying he'll take full responsibility. One by one, the enemy falls, and though Yuji despises it, the commander keeps tallying the number of neutralized foes. Not a single bullet is wasted, and the entire enemy front line is decimated. Yuji wants to keep fighting, but the commander stops him, saying it's over and he can finally rest. Yuji passes out and wakes up in Millie's lap, who comforts him. She tells him that everyone has been saved by him and that they'll always support each other. She promises never to let him die. As time on the battlefield goes by, Yuji's resolve hardens, and he becomes desensitized to the constant battles and explosions. Danny, however, starts losing his sense of what the war is about and what victory even means. Their deployment ends, and Yuji survives that harsh backdrop along with his friends. As he heads back home, Danny asks Millie if she'll be okay with her boyfriend leaving. She says they said their goodbyes yesterday and ended things, so Danny, never missing a beat, asks if he can make her feel better with his, let's say, enthusiastic proposition. Millie gazes out the window where Yuji was, praying that he finds happiness and is blessed in life. As dusk settles, Yuji boards a plane home. It's a windy day when he returns to his familiar mountain paths, just as he remembered. His welcome home committee consists of Asako, who notes how much more mature he looks now. After all his plot development, Yuji tells Asako that seeing her face is the first time he's ever felt truly glad to be alive. He confesses he doesn't know what to do with his life but wants to devote it all to her. After that, he completes his final training after the Vancouver International Airport, marking the last time he sees Danny's friendly face. As everyone cries, Yuji wonders when Danny's joke will end. A few months later, during one of Yuji's missions in Spain, JB calls him back urgently because Asako has collapsed. He learns that her condition is chronic, stemming from the many times she's been shot over the years. Doctors have tried to treat her, but her body has become extremely fragile due to all the substances she was forced to take during her deployment. Upon arrival, JB informs Yuji that Asako has been drifting in and out of consciousness frequently and sleeping longer each time. Yuji arrives home to find Asako, expressing apologies for his delayed return. He takes her hand and asks if she's dying, to which she confirms, regretting her past assurances of staying alive for him. She urges him to cease crying and embody the man she taught him to be. Asako reflects on understanding her life's purpose now that her end nears, attributing her resolve to saving him and sharing her life with him. Yuji tearfully admits he hasn't learned everything from her yet, and she encourages him to live for himself henceforth. The kind of man she's always wanted him to be, overwhelmed. He confesses she was his anchor in a tumultuous life. The reason he kept going, Asako insists he must find his own path forward without her. Even though he believes his survival depended entirely on her warmth and guidance, pondering a future without her, Yuji wrestles with the idea of continuing her legacy of strength and resilience. He even jokes about fighting off God himself to keep her by his side, prompting Asako to chuckle and reminisce about their past together. As they share their final moments, she remarks on the beauty of the stars, a sentiment Yuji echoes, recalling Yuji's tearful nights when he first joined her. Asako asks what he was thinking then, but he can't recall. They share a light-hearted moment, her fatigue evident as she asks to rest. Yuji reassures her, and as she peacefully drifts away, Asako doesn't wake again. Her passing is handled by JB's team, who find a bullet amidst her ashes, a fitting memento of her spirit. In the weeks that follow, Yuji grapples with thoughts of whether he'll join Asako in death someday, but he resolves to fulfill her wish of saving 5 people first. It becomes his sole purpose, though he yearns to reunite with her someday, grieving deeply. He spends days sleeping on the floor until JB intervenes, slapping him awake to snap him out of his sorrowful retreat at the cabin. Moved by compassion, JB invites Yuji to live with her in her apartment, believing they can heal together and support each other's emotional wounds. During a quiet dinner together, JB offers Yuji anything he needs, and he humorously requests a sturdier toothbrush, finding solace in small comforts amidst his profound loss. Flustered by JB's discovery, Yuji nonchalantly admits to using her toothbrush, reasoning that she's been using his rugged one. So what's the big deal? JB, realizing her oversight, quickly purchases 2 new toothbrushes. Yuji apologizes, but JB brushes it off, remarking that she should have expected his crude behavior, much like Asako's. However, Yuji unintentionally becomes a constant reminder of Asako to JB. One night, she breaks down in tears, apologizing for making it too difficult for both of them. As time passes, JB starts spending less time at home, leaving Yuji with ample free time to contemplate his next move. He recalls Asako's advice to explore unknown paths and learn from mistakes, even though she never fulfilled her promise of a journey together on her motorcycle. Yuji decides to leave, telling JB he's setting off wherever the wind blows, with a promise to return. Surprised by JB's ease in letting him go, Yuji sets off on Asako's motorcycle. Asako! He travels for days, meeting diverse people and camping in various places, rain or shine. He continues his journey, even sending heartfelt messages to Julia along the way. During a breakdown in the middle of nowhere, a stranger offers Yuji a ride to safety, but Yuji declines, feeling aimless and lost. The man laughs, remarking on the carefree nature of youth, which strikes a chord with Yuji. Reflecting at night, Yuji contemplates if embracing his youth is what he needs. He decides to head home, sending JB an email about his return. Arriving back, he opens a drink at Asako's grave, apologizing for not gaining any new understanding during his journey. Sensing Asako's presence, Yuji shares that he did enjoy the journey but now feels uncertain about what to do next. He considers that perhaps he needs to experience youth again and thinks about returning to school. Just then, Yuji's narrative to JB is interrupted by military orders under Article 9, reminding him that failure to comply is akin to treason, and that he must complete this mission without fail. Yuji agrees to this one last mission and goes to the mission. He gets in prone position, aiming directly at his target. He hears the music box that Oslo used to play for him and the words that convinced him to become the man he is today. Yuji has confirmed the target and his skull. However, he realized that killing Jobs has brought him under a worst-case scenario in which he will lose himself in either of the decision he takes.